Who fans of a certain age may be surprised to know that in the 1980s it may well have been a nest of anti-Thatcherite subversives. It turns out that scriptwriters for the show in that era some 20 years ago used themes and villains which might possibly be seen as a satire on Mrs. T. The BBC says it's baffled by the claims and that its impartiality rules applied then as they do now. Our culture correspondent Stephen Smith investigates.
We could all tell that Doctor Who was a bit different. Now we know he wasn't one of us. Sylvester McCoy, who played the Doctor in the 80s, has claimed that he and others linked to the show set out to satirise the then Conservative government. He said, "Our feeling was that Margaret Thatcher was far more terrifying than any monster the Doctor had encountered."
I said, it's the sort of evening that makes you feel happy to be alive.
Oh, yes, dear. Does Sheila Hancock's character Helen A remind you of anyone? But one old hand from Gallifrey cautions that the Doctor and politics don't mix.
If you're concentrating on putting over a political message rather than on doing a really good show, I think there is a danger, maybe it will be hellish difficult, and I think there's maybe a danger that the show wouldn't be as good as it could or should be, because you're not looking at the right angle.
The Doctor may be immune to Newtonian laws of time and space, but BBC impartiality guidelines applied to him in the 80s as now, says the corporation. The top dogs of the beat back then said they had no inkling of what the Doctor was up to. They were already getting it in the neck from Tory ministers as it was, they said.
Norman Tebbit came to dinner one night on the 6th floor of the BBC, and we were all summoned to the department, and he sort of shot us throughout dinner, saying, "So, what was the last right-wing programme you made?" And of course, nobody had an answer at all. My best chance was a programme called Howard's Way, so I tried to persuade him a pro-Thatcherite drama, and I didn't get very far with it.
There's a great tradition of science fiction as political allegory. Current Oscar fancy Avatar has been seen as a critique of recent US foreign policy. And District 9 from South Africa, an exploration of apartheid.
I did not know they were doing this to you guys. Or you could choose the government over projects. Are there any projects there?
Even the high-minded clangers got dragged down to the level of politics. An episode called Vote for Froglet aired on election night 1974. One sci-fi author says the revelations about Doctor Who conform to a pattern.
I'd say that British science fiction has had a more liberal, left-wing tradition than, say, American science fiction. For instance, American science fiction has had a much more militaristic theatre in written form, but also in its cinematic form and its televisual form. You think of Star Wars or Battlestar Galactica or Star Trek, of course, the military roaming around the galaxy. Yeah.
Dreary.
Mrs. T's admirers may be appalled that she was sent up on Doctor Who, but they have the satisfaction of knowing she made BBC executives of the day hide behind the sofa.
Joined now by Andrew Cartmel, who was script editor of Doctor Who in the 1980s, and by Tim Collins, a former Conservative MP and Satisfied fan. Did you really see it as a satire on Thatcherite?
Well, I didn't see the story as a satire on Thatcherite, but the character was a take on Mrs. Thatcher, absolutely.
Did you get that?
Oh, absolutely. And this is the great thing. Andrew and his colleagues were constantly telling the Doctor Who magazine, "Shh, careful, maybe the Tories will find out that we've been attacking Mrs. Thatcher. And if they do, they'll complain." And there were a whole number of us at Central Office, including people who then went on to be Director of Communications to Michael Howard and a young David Cameron, who were watching Doctor Who. Knew perfectly well what they were doing, but partly because they loved the programme, and partly also because I have to say by that stage you had about the same number of viewers.
It was a golden era of Doctor Who, wasn't it?
is it, but I'm a beneficiary of the art of selective quotation, which is the cornerstone of journalism, because that's entirely true. John, who is the producer of the show, asked me if there's one thing you could do with the show. This is towards the end of the interview, when it's obvious I was going to get the job. If there's one thing you could do, what would it be? And I said, overthrow the government, because I was young and I didn't like the way things were going.
This has changed in Doctor Who.
Only a few years ago, in a new, really popular era, there was a reference to a villain saying, we have to attack because the enemy will otherwise have weapons capable of being launched within 45 seconds. What could that have been a reference to?
I don't know why I find it more extraordinary that you can quote from Doctor Who, or the next time I think could call me bed weapons.
Well, the thing is, the crucial thing about that, me saying I wanted to overthrow the government, is what then ensues that John said, well, obviously you can't possibly do that, but the most you can do on Doctor Who is say that people with purple skin and green skin are all equal, which we then proceeded to do on the show.
You heard that point there from Adam Roberts saying that British sci-fi tends to be a bit more liberal and American sci-fi tends to be a bit more right-wing. I don't really get that. I mean, Avatar is a sort of, environmentally friendly, tree-hugging...
Yeah, funded by Rupert Murdoch, so I think it's safe to assume it's not a great attack on capitalism in that case. And don't forget, British science fiction includes traditions like C.S. Lewis, Narnia books and so forth, and also science fiction trilogy he wrote in the 30s, which was intended to be different from the soulless socialism as he saw it of H.G. Wells. Arthur Conan Doyle didn't only create Sherlock Holmes, he also created The Lost World, the origin of Challenger series. He was an imperialist, he stood as a unionist for Parliament. And now, if you come up to date, it's true, American sci-fi can be very militaristic. In Stargate Atlantis, for example, they go to strange new worlds and blow the hell out of them with M16s. That's a very American thing. But the idea that it can only be left-wing is wrong.
Maybe the difference is between right and left wing is between sci-fi, which does have some kind of political point, but some kind of dystopian.
The notion that there's some kind of Marxist party is wonderful, but it's not true. I mean, one of the writers had a father who was a Marxist, which is about as close as
well, that's...